As Qigong students, we all face the question of how to integrate Qineng Qigong into our daily lives. Join Martha Work on her journey navigating through life from overcoming depression to insights triggered by caring for her mother in her final month and ultimately changing her thoughts on aging. My name is Thorsten Lüdecke and this is the Wisdom Qigong podcast. I've got Martha Wok with me from Kentucky, and Martha has been with Qigong for many, many years. So since the beginning of my career as a Qineng Qigonger, I've already heard her name. So I'm very, very pleased that she is joining us today. And I'm particularly pleased, Martha, that you would like to talk about how to integrate Qigong into your daily life. So maybe you can let us know of what you mean by that and how you do that.
All right, and thank you for having me. I'm really pleased to be here and share about Qigong. And one part of that is that I'm a very introverted person. And typically, in the past, this is something I would not have done. I would just, oh, no, no, no. It would be very awkward and uncomfortable. And Qigong has caused this shift. And I think part of it is because I'm so passionate about it, because it's really changed my life in such a positive way. Then I want to share it. So, yeah, when I began, I was suffering from depression. This was 2008 when I started, and I'd had not severe but chronic depression for years. And Qigong is what began to really turn that around. And so I think it was just that the whole idea of adjusting the mindset, of being aware of when I was having negative thoughts and then transforming those into positive is one really good example of bringing the practice into your daily life. So during the Qi therapist training with teacher Liu and Britta, that was one of our assignments. And when I first started to do it, I read a little research and it said that 80% of humans' thoughts tend to be negative. And I said, oh, no way, But then when I started becoming aware, I was like, oh, yeah, I'm probably above 80%, and just to be able to interrupt those thoughts is so powerful to just say, wait, this thought of maybe, let's say, judging another person, that's not being true to myself, to who I want to be, who I'm growing and progressing to be, is, thinking really negative thoughts about other people. It makes me, like I say, not be who I feel that I am meant to be. So that was huge. And then other things are like the idea of looking at every moment as a brand new point in life. So let's say we meet a stranger, instead of all of a sudden, it's so automatically easy to kind of put them into a box, to paint them based on impressions we've had throughout our life of other people. And, so this idea that teacher Liu brings is to look at everything like a newborn baby, as if you're seeing it for the first time. And that is so powerful. It brings you into the present moment and gives you a freedom, from all those past habits and perceptions and judgments.
Now, what that needs is a lot of awareness, of being attentive in every moment, because these thoughts, they come automatically. And most of us, we don't notice when it happens. So you meet someone new, you start, your judgment machine starts, or something happens and your negative thought starts. So the real key to accessing this is being attentive, isn't it?
Yes, yes. Just that awareness is huge, just starting to notice. And then a piece of that too, once I started to notice, it's easy to kind of beat up on yourself and say, whoa, I had no idea that I was being so negative in my life. And then I think, to realize we're all human, we all do that, and to be compassionate with ourselves, and then we can begin to be more compassionate with others.
Right, I understand. Now, for me, I would even say it goes one step further. I mean, I'm not the kind of guy that tends to beat up on himself, but I'm the kind of righteous guy. So, for example, if I meet someone new and I've got my judgments, even though when I'm attentive and I notice I've got my judgment, there's a part in me that says, yeah, but it's so much fun to make a judgment because it means I'm the one that can, has control about something, and I can judge something. So it kind of puts me on a higher pedestal, and that's a joy. So it's the awareness needs to come and say, okay, what I'm doing there is really not doing me nor the other person any good. And
Mhm.
but it's also saying, I notice it in particular when I'm in traffic, and other people are doing stupid mistakes, right? Then it's so much. It brings me joy. It's fun to be angry about that and to be right because I can drive so much better than that person. So I think this is also an aspect that we have to acknowledge. There's also a reason why we're doing these things. There's a reason why we have these thought patterns because on one level it gives us satisfaction, and so to be aware, but also then to have a clear commitment of, you said that's not who I want to be, right? This is not the idea I have about myself and for myself of how I want to live my life. So I think this is an important aspect to bring into it next to the awareness, right?
Yes, yes. And it's interesting for me, there's similarities, but really I think it stems from a different place, the judging. I grew up with very low self-esteem, and I think it was, but then it was to put me above the other person by judging them, but maybe coming from a different source of I felt inferior, not good enough. So, but and then the idea of traffic, I love that you brought that up. That's a big one for me. I'm so impatient in traffic. And now, occasionally, I will look at it as training for my mind and my mindset. So I did something very unusual. Usually, I'll go shopping, in a crowded area. I'll do it when it's not going to be as crowded. Well, 2 days before Christmas, I kind of set this up. So I would go grocery shopping in this area that has malls, and it's just so crowded that time of year. And I said, and I am going to really work to not have any negative thoughts the whole time I'm doing this. And it was amazing. It was, I would see them start to come up and then go, no, I'm just going to enjoy the color of the sky, or just wonder what this person's doing. What are they up to today? And just have a whole different, come from a place maybe of curiosity rather than that impatience.
I love that example because you're bringing up another point here. So it's not just going through life having an awareness of what we are doing. You're also setting an intention here. So you say, yeah, I've got an intention. I'm going into a place where I know I would usually not enjoy so much, but I make it like my little exercise now to be, to go there with an intention to enjoy it and to be positive about everything that's going on there. And I
Mhm.
think this is great because this is helps us to practice our mind. It's one thing trying to be aware, but then we are so easily distracted and we're just back into our pattern. But you're starting with setting an intention. And I think, as we said, how can we integrate Qigong in our daily lives? I would say this is a perfect tool that, any of our listeners can take and say, okay, now for the next hour or whatever, I go out with the intention of, having only positive thoughts. So your mind is focused on what am I actually doing inside of my head here, rather than just accidentally catching yourself having a negative thought. And
Mhm.
so I think this is a great tool that we can, all use in our daily life to practice it. And it is a Qigong practice at the end of the day, because we know from our great teachers that life is beautiful and everything is beautiful and everything is good the way it is. So there is no need, to look and trying to make something negative. So that's great. And next to the consciousness work, obviously, we also have the physical exercises. Is there any idea you could bring to the audience here of how to integrate the physical side into your daily life in an easy or playful way or in a way that's working for you?
Yeah, yeah. First, I want to say one more thing about that. The
Please.
practicing in real life. I got the idea from my older daughter, and She talked about weather training. She and her partner moved to Minneapolis, which is way north of where I am, and it's a lot of really cold weather. So I kind of don't like winter, so I started doing that same thing, going out when it was very cold, waiting even until it was dark out, and like I'm weather training. And that whole idea of just training, where okay, if I can do this, get out in this winter and embrace it, it's that idea of embracing those things that kind of push our buttons the most. And then as far as practices, wow, well, what popped into mind first was holding the body chi field, because it's such a, it's a stationary meditation. And I'll be honest, those are much more difficult for me. I love the moving, where I'm moving my body. And I've been holding the body chi field every day lately, and it's challenging, because you really become aware of all that chatter in your mind. And some of it's negative, some of it's just, what am I going to have for dinner? So that idea of just coming back to stillness over and over and getting more quiet, I think is very beneficial.
We have a way you can discover Qigong. So at the Chuneng Qigong Students Hub, we know that understanding Qigong is very important. And also that Chuneng Qigong in itself has various nuances that people can't easily comprehend. So we've approached it in the style of a video game. On this page, Discover Qigong, you can select your character. So you can either be a beginner, a practitioner, or a holistic healer or self-healer. And you click on your character and it takes you to these different sections. In these sections, you can explore the nuances. And when you click on a card, all of the resources pop up, and we've made it really fun, and not many people know about it. So if you are interested, have a look and discover Qigong.
Right. And how do you there are two kind of people in the world. Some of them are just looking forward to their Qigong exercise, and that's why they are doing it. And then there are the others that say, okay, I still need to do my lift chi up or my holding the body chi field, or maybe I'll do it in an hour, maybe I'll do it this afternoon, maybe I'll do it this evening, and then it never happens. So what is your approach there?
Okay, I have not that long ago shifted from the second type to the first. I used to just do it. Okay, I'll just do it when when I want. And so often, I'd be kind of rushing through my practice right before going to bed, and it just wasn't as meaningful. It's probably been 4 months. I've been every day, first thing, I practice. So that has made a tremendous difference. It's not like a choice or a chore. It's just, this is what I do when I get up. And it really made a huge difference. And I had done it off and on in the past, but now I've really set that intention to do it every day.
So it's again intention here that makes you do it. It's not a question, okay, shall I do it now? Should I not do it? It's like you make a decision, you have a clear intention, and then you go for it, right?
Right. And I've heard that when you're trying to form a new habit, let's say flossing your teeth every day, that I believe, and it was years ago I heard this, but that maybe after 6 weeks, things just become so automatic. It's become so much easier. It's not as much work to do that every day.
Okay, cool. So what else is to add when you say, how to integrate Qigong into your daily life?
I had a lot of physical challenges after being my mother's main caregiver in her last few months of life. And I really kind of felt broken after that. It wasn't, she was 94. She was very much ready to die, but it was the stress. I'm more a right brain artistic type. And I was managing her meds and getting up in the night and giving her meds, and, so not sleeping well, and just taking her to Western medicine visits, which is challenging for me. So I really, while it was going on, I practiced a little bit every day. But then when it was over, it's like, okay, Qigong is that's how I'm going to get back to balance. Because like I say, I just felt kind of defeated by the whole experience. It sort of opened my eyes to how it made me feel like I kind of couldn't trust the universe, that, oh, life can be much harder than I had realized, So that was carried over from something as a child that, or, something I had a belief of as a child, that life is scary. It's hard and difficult. And through my training with Qigong and other things over the years, I came to really embrace life and be more positive. But this kind of put me right back there, like that little girl who was scared and didn't trust anything. So the Qigong practice there has just been huge, and it's so many levels. It's around opening my heart around the Western medicine that was so difficult for me to be part of, but I, accepting that was her choice, and just taking time every day to be with myself and really nourish myself. And all of the Qigong practices do that for me. And I've been even more intentional about it lately, just kind of getting in touch with that part of me from when I was a little girl that was so afraid, and getting in touch with that part of me that doesn't like to manage things and be, very stick to a schedule and all of those things.
So what you're saying here is that in times when life is not so friendly towards us, so when we are faced with situations that are more challenging than our normal everyday life, that then using Qigong and focusing on Qigong is a great way of helping us to get through it, right?
Yes, and it feels like it's at my core, it's my way to ground and get centered, and really, before I began practicing Qigong, I just didn't have that. I was kind of flailing around looking for something like that. I did Tai Chi, which was wonderful, but just didn't go as deep for me. And I tried stationary meditation, some Buddhist meditations. Again, didn't really work for me. And then with Qigong, it was like, oh, okay, this is it. Although I have to say, after I first went to a demonstration, it took me quite a while to commit. But once I did, it was just life-changing and on all levels.
And what are the insights that you're getting when you're doing Qin and Qigong in this particular situation? So you're with your dying mother, and obviously this is a challenging time for you, and you use the practice. What are the insights? What are the thoughts? I mean, one thing you mentioned, which is opening up your heart to Western medicine, which is, while I'm saying it, already there's a part in my mind says, how can you even do that, right? Because, we all think there's so much evil about it, which obviously there isn't. I mean, Western medicine has its place, but our natural way of doing things is obviously with natural health methods. But this is a great insight, I think, where you can say, okay, well, there's no point me resisting that. And also there is, another person involved, and she also makes choices, and I respect these choices, and she will have her good reasons. So it's now Western medicine, something that I'm normally trying to avoid as much as possible. Are there any other thought processes or insight you had while you were, taking care of your mother and working with Qigong through that time?
Yes, and I love the way you said resisting what's happening, because I would catch myself doing that at the very end. After she quit, she was at home, but with hospice care and then family. She quit eating, and then I thought, and then I read online, people usually die within 2 to 3 days. Well, it was 11 days with no food, no water. And I was resisting that. I was like, why is she having to suffer, like as if I knew best? And then I just had to open and trust the process, that maybe she's processing things that I know nothing about. And I think that's just huge, with not just the situation with my mom, but with everything. I'm realizing more and more, there's just so much I don't know. And so I can't, I know this piece of it, and it might not fit in with what I value or want, but there's just so much I don't understand. And just that's kind of takes a weight off my shoulders. Like, I don't have to know why this is happening like this.
Yes. And it's also a humbling experience because once we really have the insight that we know very little, then all our judgments and thoughts become less important.
Hmm.
Because chances are they are wrong anyway, as we only have a tiny little bit of information about what's going on. And then we can relax about things because we don't have to insist in a certain on a certain way or on certain truths that we feel is so. So that's a great, yeah, a great example. And I'd also like to go a little bit back here at where we started because I
Hmm.
missed that point, but I know that this is an important point for many in our audience because you said you were dealing with depression when you met Qin and Qigong. And I've seen people that, found Qin and Qigong and they worked their way out of depression, but I've also seen others that kind of didn't get the right angle or I don't know how to express it better, where they struggle and it didn't really move them to where they wanted to get. So is there anything you could share with us about this experience, maybe?
I think I was just desperate. I had two kids. I think I was 48. I mean, they weren't little at that point, but 10 and 10 and 6 maybe, so kind of young. And I just was so motivated to be a better mom. I was a really good parent. I didn't trust that for a long time, but then I saw my kids are wonderful, so I'm doing a lot of things right. And I want to be a better role model. I don't want them to see this person who's sad and who overeats and comforts herself and gets numb. So I think that was just such huge motivation. And then I started with Deborah Lissam, who is the woman who here in the States who lived not far from me. And she's the one who brought Teacher Liu to the United States for the first time. And, of course it was a process, but I just trusted it. It just felt, I think I was just so ready for it because I was just sick of things just that, couldn't wait to get in bed at night. And so I was just very willing to trust and dive in. And that was a process too. At first, it was just I would force myself to go to class, or sometimes my husband, he's so supportive, he would just say, those weeks when I was saying, I don't think I'll go today, he'll say, well, maybe that's when you need it the most, and
Hmm.
gently encourage me to go. So having support around it is great. Maybe if other people are having that same issue, see if they can get a friend involved or just ask someone to be accountable to them. Um, when it really shifted for me was in my health was in 2010, and I went to my first retreat with Teacher Liu at Oakwood in Muncie, Indiana. It's on a farm, wonderful space. And after that retreat, I, did the whole retreat and had a couple of individual healings with a man called Master Mung, Teacher Mung. And I just had, when I got home, this shift in everything, in mindset. Suddenly I started eating the foods that would support my body. And the depression had gradually cleared. There was just this big push forward, a real movement forward.
I'll hear two things that I would like to come back to. The first thing is that now in depression often we have no motivation at all. But you seem to have been coming from a place where you were kind of so fed up with being depressed and what it means and for your daily life that there was a counterbalance, a counter power, something else within you that really said, yeah, I want to get rid of it, right?
Hmm.
And that is, I think, an important factor because depression, by definition, is kind of let me lie in bed and not do anything, right? So
Right.
to connect to this part within you that says, I don't want that. That must have been important, and then the support of your husband, or it could be of other people as well, to carry you to the training if necessary, and to do things. And the second thing that I noticed when you explained that is that you actually took the positive experiences that you had. So there were some successes in the workshop. There were some healing, yeah, when you were with Master Leo and Master Monk. There were some things that shifted something, and you kind of took it as a reference to say, well, if that is possible, then let me work more, let me do more, right? And
Mhm.
I think this is a secret. I wish that everybody understands, because most of the Chineng Qigong practitioners, they have this experience at one place or another. Yeah, that some miracle happens or some major shift happens because of Chineng Qigong, but they tend to forget about that. Rather than keeping this like a lighthouse in front of them and saying, okay, well, I've seen it works. So now let me continue on my path. Now let me use it for the other goals I have, and let me continue, the journey I'm on. So I think it's from what you explained and how you explained it. You seem to have taken these examples of where you had successes and built on it. Is that fair to say, or am I making it up?
Yes, no, no. Two things about that. When I had this one healing with Master Meng, it was just deeply spiritual, and I felt this oneness with the universe that I had never felt. When I walked out of there, every blade of grass was, just glowing. I was 100% present. So that showed me what was possible. Then, yeah, I'm human. It was a process. I definitely, it was a big step forward, but there was, and still are, where I backslide and move forward again. But just that knowing what's possible, that sense of oneness and presence and peacefulness, that I know that now. So as I backslide, I can say, wait, this is where I want to move.
Right. And that's what I mean. So don't forget these things, right? Keep them present, because when the shit hits the fan and there's other stuff happening, we so easily forget about these things. While this is the moment when we need them the most. This reference to say, okay, I know what it can be like, and I know what's possible. So always remember these things and treasure them. And I can tell because you're still talking about it very vividly. So although it was many years ago, you seem to treasure it, and you seem to keep it present within you. So I think this is a great tip for anyone who's in a situation like you've just described.
Yeah, definitely.
Is there anything you'd like to add to these points, or anything you'd like to explore a little further that we have touched upon?
Well, we might have touched upon this, but the idea of releasing heart stones as a way to bring the practice into the daily life has been huge for me. I had a very difficult relationship with my father, and there was, like I said, I grew up fearful and with some trauma, and I had very gradually released some of that, but it would still be like when I thought of him, there was this mix. There was the love, but there was also this, and it's just recently that when I think of him, there's just the love left. That's all. So that was a big piece of that. I've been doing a lot of work, but a big piece of that was at one retreat at Oakwood with Liu, where we did an exercise to release heart stones, a practice. And I was a puddle in the corner just sobbing, and so much of it came out. So that was a big step forward. And then it was a more gradual process after that, including EMDR therapy was wonderful. And I think works really well with Qigong. I kind of included that in my practice in some ways. You're dealing with trauma, and you watch a bouncing ball or have a clicker in each hand. And they used to think it was the actual movement of the eyes imitating REM sleep and bringing things from being trauma stays so present, more putting it in the past where it belongs. Now they think it's right brain, left brain, the awareness going from right brain and left brain and back and forth. But
Right.
yeah, it's been a wonderful tool for my process.
Okay, that's great. I mean, I don't know much about it. I've heard about it, and it seems, because you said it's working well with in Chineng Qigong. I mean, in Chineng Qigong, we also have this idea that if it belongs into the past, if it's the past, then it belongs into the past, and our focus is on in the present, and in designing our future. But it's one thing to know that, and it's another one to do the emotional work. that is involved with it. And I don't know the exact exercise you did with Master Leo there in Oakwood, but I know that resolving heart stones is an important part of his work. And I'm glad it worked so well for you here. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it was basically, the brief version, he would have us imagine a person sitting in front of us, and I did it with my father and just connecting to them, even though he was no longer living, connecting with them heart to heart, mind to mind, and just really connecting with their essence, their true self that may have gotten twisted and turned along the way, but that their essence, that best part of them with our best part, and it's very powerful.
Beautiful. Okay, wonderful. Anything else that we've left out, or anything you would like to explore a little further?
Well, and I don't know if this is useful, but I'll talk about it a little bit. Another kind of therapy that I kind of have done on my own through a book, I have No Bad Parts. It's internal family systems. And I have found I've been using that to deal with the things around my mom's caregiving. And it works beautifully with Qigong. But it's about, I was talking about that part of me that was a frightened little child, and that part of me that really doesn't like to manage things, and you kind of just get in touch with and nurture those parts of yourself. So to me, like I say, really connects nicely with Qigong, and I kind of find myself doing both at once.
Right.
It just kind of opens. It's just very opening.
Martha, you've also mentioned that Qineng Qigong has changed your views on aging. So that will be something I'd like to go into a little bit further, because that is also our daily life. I mean, daily life means we are aging. So how has it altered your views? How has it changed your views?
Yeah, well, I think as a culture, what I was picking up, that a lot of people in our society and media kind of see aging as just, okay, you're just going downhill, and you'll just more and more loss of abilities and talents and skills. And with Zhi Qigong, I feel like I have so much more control over how the rest of my life goes in such a wonderful way. Control over my health, and I use very little Western medicine, and just with my mindset becoming more and more peaceful. And we do have loss, we do have changes, we do have suffering as we grow older and lose friends. And with Zhi Qigong, I feel so much support for these processes, and again, especially that idea of having control over my health and how my life goes.
Right, right. So, and this is a great point, because it's not only aging, it is really the idea of being responsible for your own health. And that is something that quite a few people actually get wrong, because they think Qineng Qigong is a method that does something to me, or there is a teacher that heals me. And it's actually the opposite. It's really trusting your own abilities to do the healing, to do the work, and to create the life that you want. So I love that you bring it up when we talk about aging, because as you said, most of us have the idea that with aging, we're losing the control there. But this gives you a lot of confidence here that you have something to say, that you have a tool, a method that can direct your life no matter what age, and can make sure you're not this helpless person. And so I think that's a great thing to add, and it fits perfectly into your how to integrate Qineng Qigong into your daily life, because this is a huge part of our daily life.
Exactly. And if I do see myself getting discouraged or feeling, defeated or something, it's like, wait a minute, I have these tools, and it's just being willing. It's work and it's joy, but just having that discipline to use these tools, it's life-changing.
That's a beautiful finishing words for our little episode today, Martha. So thank you very much. And it was a pleasure to have you on the show, and I hope to see you soon again, maybe for another episode for more of your wisdom and more of your ideas.
Well, and thank you, Torsten. It was a pleasure, and you really made the process very pleasant. Thanks.
We trust you enjoyed this conversation, and we invite you to subscribe to our podcast so we can stay in touch and notify you of future episodes. We will end today's episode with the 8 verses meditation performed by Qineng Qigong teacher Katrin Hendricks. Enjoy.
Ding tian li di, sing a song each song. Why, Jin, Jin, Shin Chong Mao Gong. Yin Yang Bu Qi, Shen Zhou Zai Gong, Shen Yi Zhao Ti, Zhou Shen Rong Rong, Zhou Shen Rong Rong, Zhou Shen Rong Rong.
To get your free ebook on the 8 Verses meditation, please check the show notes below.